Hello everyone. In this video clip, President Kunkel and I discuss how to have conversations with people who you disagree with. This is complicated for President Kunkel as he serves as a diplomat for St. Norbert College, and previously he was a journalist. Both roles sort of require him not to share his personal opinion as often as possible. However, he does share some tips that he has about approaching these dialogues with different people. This is just a smaller excerpt from our conversation. If you want to watch our full video conversation, I will have that linked in the description box. I will also be releasing a podcast for this conversation in about a week or so. But without further ado, let's hear what President Kunkel has to say about having civil discourse. How do you approach conversations with people that you really disagree with? Maybe you can give us some tips.
Well, that's a good question. Well, I mean, sometimes I guess I'm in conversation with people that I know I'm going to disagree with. More often than not, I may not realize I'm going to disagree with somebody, and until we fall into by accident into some aspect of conversation. It's a little tricky. I mean, in part because when you're a college president, you're a pretty large part diplomat.
Yeah.
You are sort of the face of the institution, and so any conversation ultimately can reflect back to the institution. And so, and maybe some of this too is for 25 years before I was a college president, I was a journalist. Well, kind of like college president, as journalists, you're sort of in the business of not letting people know what your own personal politics are, because you're supposed to be objective. So my whole life I've sort of been trained, not to just throw myself into like super deep political conversations, because it's professionally it was unwarranted. I try to. I mean, I've always enjoyed challenging conversations with people if I know that they're open to dialogue, because that's fun. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine the other day that I go back all the way to high school with, and she was reminding me, she got so upset with me one day because we were arguing in class, and I don't even remember what it was, she didn't either, but she was arguing one point and I was arguing the diametric opposite point, and she was getting so mad at me because I couldn't see why I was so wrong-headed. And so afterward, she said, "I can't believe that you actually believe that." And I said, "I don't believe that." Mm-hmm. And she said, "Well, what do you mean you were arguing?" I said, "Yeah, I was arguing because I like to argue. I don't believe it."
Yeah.
And so, so then she was upset with me because I didn't seem to have any principles. But that wasn't it at all. I just like to argue, and that was one of the reasons that I went into journalism, because I'm not a cynical person, but I'm a skeptical person. And so, and when you go into journalism, you learn fairly quickly that you ask a lot of questions, because if you really want to know, you need to probe, and usually what people think isn't necessarily what they first say. Mm-hmm. So, I'm kind of walking around your question here. I thoroughly enjoy vigorous conversations with people that I respect, people that I don't respect, and that would include a lot of people that just reflexively feel like their way is the right way or the highway. Why bother? It's just life's too short. Yeah. So so you're always kind of doing a quick triage. Is there any point to this conversation?
Yeah.
I mean, many of these people that wrote us about Gloria Steinem, I'm not going to convert. If they were alums or people that were close to the college that I knew, I actually took a lot of time to talk and to write about why we did. I said, I know I'm not going to persuade you, but this is why we did it, and people do appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But the people that were just responding to an internet petition, fine, that's their right, but it doesn't mean I have to use up any more of my time, trying to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. What you were saying about if the other party is closed off, that's why I think it's so frustrating today. I mean, especially in a political context, because with the whole idea of like echo chambers on both sides, and how people are just unwilling to recognize the validity of another person's perspective. The problem is, if that closes down conversations, which I tend to do as well, because I think, what's the point? How is that even going to get better?
Well, that's a good point. It's a fair point. I think, I'm not sure that that sort of one-on-one, at least with my generation, we are who we are. Mm. I mean, so folks, for instance, who keep thinking that maybe President Trump might change, he's not going to change. He's a 70-year-old man. He's fully baked. He is what he is.
It's fully baked.
And I'm a nearly 62-year-old man. I'm fully baked. I am who I am. What I think will change, which is not to say that we abdicate our obligation to try and do better. Of course, we all need to try and do better. But I don't think the current state of the country in terms of political discourse is going to really change until it's more like your generation, the millennials and the next group coming, that are going to hold more sway with what's happening in the country. And I'm very hopeful about that, because you're seeing, you guys are seeing a lot of this nonsense. You're not seeing the value in it. In fact, you're seeing the lack of value in it. And you're not so doctrinaire, you're not so dogmatic. You tend to have a little more complex views about things than I think people maybe give you credit for. So I'm very hopeful that, my daughter's and my son-in-law's generation is going to help lead the way to a kinder, more congenial, collegial sort of environment. I mean, we think we're living in a special moment. In some ways we are, but on the other hand, there's a 400-year history in America. We've always had times like this where we politically kind of go to different corners and have at it. I mean, we actually went to war with each other. Yeah. So it's in our DNA. But eventually, a reconciliation tends to happen because people finally realize that you have to. And I think that will happen again here. I just don't hold out a lot of hope that my generation will be leading the way. I'm very hopeful that your generation will.